Ah, Charles, it's such a thing. Everything was set, and then at the last minute, there is no direct evidence. I know, I know. Give me a minute.
Yeah.
There is no direct evidence, but it is just remarkably coincidental how things fail at precise moments.
Amazing.
It is amazing, but it's not going to stop me from getting this stuff back to working. I appreciate the people who have waited with us. I had everything all set, and now here we go. We'll get it back. Okay. So everybody is waiting to hear what the Senate is going to say in their final vote here. We're live, so you can feel free to talk if you have anything you want to say.
No, it's great. Sorry. So, yeah, this is a major league day. In the last 24 hours, I think President Trump's fortunes have changed markedly for many reasons. If we go back to the election night, the theory was that amongst the intelligentsia, otherwise known as the walking idiots, who operate in mainstream as pundits, the theory was that the population had just lost its mind and handed the keys to a sports car, to a Lamborghini, to somebody who was blind and drunk at the same time, and everything was going to go off the rails. This business dude, celebrity would have no clue how to act presidential and to run the ship of state. In reality, in spite of incredible opposition, I think few presidents other than Lincoln probably have had the kind of, Lincoln obviously more than Trump, have had the kind of opposition that Trump has had from day one. And yet, his accomplishments domestically, as were reviewed last night, were amazing. Going against the views of the experts, he decided to address structural disadvantages that the United States was under in unregulated globalism, where we've almost surrendered our sovereignty to UN, World Bank, World Health Organization. He stood up and said, enough of this crap. I'm not doing that anymore. And everybody said it wasn't going to work. Everybody was quite prepared to let China be the dominant nation for the next million years. And Trump said, you know what? That's craziness. I'm not doing that. I like to win. If you want to be a loser, go lose somewhere else. And, here again, in the last 24 hours, I think that the likelihood that we'll see, but I hope he's not going to be convicted. I assume he will not be convicted in the Senate. But he's gone from somebody with this impeachment cloud over his head, maybe just treading water in a fight against China, to literally obliterating China. If you're sitting here thinking about, as a serious person, thinking about putting, let's say, $1 billion into China today, you are basically an idiot at this point. There is no way.
Jack Ma?
Yeah, well, look at the Jack Ma experience. Look at the whole cavalier way in which the Chinese Communist Party treats foreign capital or any capital coming inside the country. That's not a place to put money at this point in time. Before you get to the risks inherent now in this out-of-control virus, the likely reactions of the population, and their anger being stoked against this regime. It's tough enough with a majority of the population to make a command economy actually work well when you have critical defects in the way in which your society is organized. You don't encourage creative thought. You don't encourage discourse and debate. You don't encourage the kind of the maverick tendencies that I think do spur innovation. And you've got 1.4 billion people or thereabouts to manage with an infrastructure that's, there are too many people in the rural areas and not enough people in the cities, and the cities are still overcrowded. There's so many problems over there. And, you forget about what the people at CNN and MSNBC have to say and the main anchors have to say. This president has changed the risk-reward, from a business standpoint, the risk-reward profile of the United States of America, from an overtaxed, overregulated, heading the wrong way into socialism Venezuela clone, into a place where it's the largest market in the world. People are happy and thriving, and it's tough to fill jobs. There's so much dynamism in this economy. You compare that to France, How I Married My Mother is running that country, or Angela Merkel is, destroying Germany, and China's blowing. I mean, around the world, tell me a place, a big, vibrant market where it makes sense to invest other than this country. And don't try to say, as Nancy Pelosi, that the reason everything's working is because you moderated the impulses of the president, or as Chuck Schumer, that, if it weren't for his courageous stands in the Senate, we wouldn't be in this great place we are. I mean, come on.
Schumer actually thinks that?
They did. No, both of them think that.
We're getting some interesting comments here, Charles. Rise Above is watching us on Periscope. She says that Nancy Pelosi, I presume it's a she, he or she says Nancy Pelosi showcased her heart full of love last night.
Really? I mean, Nancy Pelosi, look, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi will be evaluated not only by, what was the name, Rise Above, or you, Jason, or me, or our wider audience, or Nancy Pelosi is going to now, she's in the history books. She will be ranked as the most deplorable speaker, among the top 5 worst speakers of the House. She'll be in that.
Who's
group.
Worse?
I don't know.
I think if you had someone who couldn't speak, they'd be better than her. The other thing is, we've got Joanne 1520 saying Pelosi had little starter tears in her paper pile so she could be sure to get through, and it still took 4 stacks. That's a good point. Pelosi had it separated out. It was a very planned demonstration. I mean, it was not the right venue, not the right forum. I saw an interview this morning with the brother, I think the guy's name was Tracy or something like that. His brother had been killed by an illegal immigrant who had been let go on the sanctuary city laws, and he said that he cried when Nancy Pelosi ripped that up because that was the story of his brother. I mean,
it's just nonsensical. I mean, we have many problems in this country, though we are a great country, if not the greatest ever. One of the problems we have is that our educational system, and I speak here of the institutions I went to, Yale and Harvard, you name it, they need to be not torn down, but the way in which our young people are, in quotes, educated needs to be completely changed.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who would look at Nancy Pelosi's behavior and say that she was reverent, that she respected the institution, has obviously studied nothing about history prior to 1776.
I don't think you need to study history. It was just rude. I mean, she's there at this bipartisan, this is supposed to be We're America.
Well, but again, I'd like to just make a slightly different point, which is if you go back to 1776, when you can say it was rich white men, and they weren't all rich, but they were all white men. You can say that what they did was nothing more than a debating society, so they wrote a document and they did this and that. In 1776, when Thomas Jefferson signed the Declaration of Independence, wrote the Declaration of Independence, or drafted, I should say, it was the crimes, the English law was severe, and the penalty for losing, had those people lost the fight with Britain, would not only be that each of them would have been hanged, drawn, and quartered. And to just refresh people's recollection of what hang, drawn, and quartered means, you're hanged until by the neck until they don't kill you. They make you hang there in excruciating agony. Then they take you off the rack and they attach your body to the back of a horse cart and they drive you across cobblestone streets with all kinds of debris on it, right? That are meant to cut your body and break your bones and this and that. And then what they do, once they've softened you up, they then cut your body into 4 pieces, take your head, put it on a pike, and leave all these pieces on the wall of the outskirts of whatever city it is that you were living.
Seems like a lot of effort.
That's right. You know, I mean, that's what these, and that's not the end of it. So the reason they do that, they did that, the theory was that in no way could you ever enter heaven, right? You would go off and you consigned to a life in hell because of that. On top of which, your offspring could not inherit your property. They were doomed, all your offspring. So it was like the penalty for getting it wrong was severe. And these were people who say, oh, they're just rich people. Well, the fact is, you know, they had more financially to lose, a lot more, not forgetting the great risks they were taking, and there was no guarantee that they were going to win. Indeed, the percentage of people who were in favor of the revolution, by some estimates, is thought to be about 10% of the population.
Huh.
Right? It's not like 95% of all Americans said, yeah, let's leave England. They were like, no, we kind of like this. We like English furniture. We like food from England.
The muffins.
We love those muffins and, you know, spotted dick and everything else they like over there. But, you know, it was a major league thing. And it wasn't like you could say, well, all right, there's all sorts of other countries that have tried this. We'll just follow their experiment. No, we were the first to do this. Everybody was telling these people it was ridiculous. It actually didn't work from 1782 to 1789. They tried a European Union model with a weak central executive, and it didn't work. And then the people came together and framed the Constitution. The states adopted it. And was anything perfect? Of course nothing was perfect. You know, look at these scruffies walking around New York City and flying around the world with these ridiculous beards and crazy hats and crazy clothes and stinking, smelling. I mean, you know, lecturing us about how we ought to. I mean, nothing is perfect, and especially no human is perfect. And so to look back through history and say, well, I don't see perfection here, so therefore it's all wrong, is ridiculous. So Nancy, the Speaker of the House, under the original construction of the Constitution, was an extraordinarily powerful person because under the original system of the Constitution, in the legislatures in each of the states, they were the ones who selected the senators. Senators were not popularly elected. So, you know, the Speaker was a really big deal. And this Speaker will rue the day that she allowed that ass clown Schiff to go down a track that he went down and is still going down, and threatens to continue going down, holding impeachment inquiry hearings in the Intelligence Committee, where they shouldn't have been based in the first place. It's not that they weren't bipartisan. It was a complete con job, start to finish.
So people in the chat are reporting that Trump has been acquitted 52-48.
Very good. Of both counts or one?
Well, let's check. I mean, honestly, I'm still disappointed that they didn't do a motion to dismiss, but I guess they determined that this acquittal was better.
I think what they may have determined that they could get it done faster this way, and then they could go back and expunge the vote into 2021, which is something if they win back control of the House.
President Trump acquitted on abuse of power. A vote on obstruction follows.
All right.
So we'll see.
I'll tell you one person I would obstruct if I were President Trump, and that would be Mitt Romney. Willard Mittens Romney.
He's
a disgrace, honestly. That guy is a disgrace.
And
to think that we nominated him and Trump, and Ryan, him and Trump, in 2012. I mean, to think Mitt Romney actually could have been in his second term as president. I mean, thank God he didn't get that far.
Yeah, no, he was a joker. I do really enjoy this photo, Charles, because it just looks like Mitt Romney looks like such a wimp, and Trump looks like he's ready to...
He's like, can I get back to my house and have a cheeseburger? I mean, what is this crap?
Just Mitt Romney looks so timid. I don't know. What do they got there? Scallops or something?
I think that's isn't it at that Jean-Georges restaurant that's incredibly expensive? And
no idea.
It is, I think. That was. I wondered why Trump would have. This is when Romney was trying to be Secretary of State, and Trump was like, probably, you got to be shitting me. I'm not dealing with this.
I hope he made him pay the check.
Of course, he would have done that. He would have paid.
Trump would pay.
Of course. I would assume.
Mitt Romney you should have taken him to McDonald's.
Yeah, it's you can't drink coffee as a woman.
Mitt Romney?
Yeah.
Well, Oh, you mean that's the only thing at McDonald's worth eating?
No, see, you can't. I said you should get him a coffee. I thought you were thinking of me. That's what I have, a coffee at McDonald's.
No. I'm just saying I wouldn't take Mitt Romney to Jean George. I would take him to like Chick-fil-A or something.
He'd probably be big into that.
Yeah, I don't really like Chick-fil-A.
So anyway, I think the art department here is once again outdone itself, and the movie Gladiator is a great movie, and really Trump had the demeanor. I mean, what he did yet last night, and there was a great course that I remember to this day at Yale called The History of American Oratory, and it was not a course that anybody could go to. You had to apply for the right to be among the select few who would then be lectured by this great professor, Roland Osterweiss, who's long dead, who was your classic paper chase style professor, with vest and very well dressed and tweed and this and that, and he would sit us down and we would review the different great speeches, and he would explain the tricks, the great orators. And there's a lot to that stuff. That prior to radio, it was in the University of Michigan. I only know this because one of my great grandfathers was in the first law class there.
Laid the cornerstone on the foundation.
Well, he actually won the first speaking contest at the University of Michigan. His name was his great name, Austin Carlos Gormley was his name. And anyway, at that time, and I think it was 1891. If I'm not mistaken, or two, he, the highest paid professor at the University of Michigan was a professor of oratory. Because, you think about it, there's no radio. What are you going to do across the country? You would go to these speeches and debates, and there were it was really big stuff. And there was a fine art to doing it. The speech that Trump gave last night was definitely among, in my opinion, probably not the top 3, but maybe the top 5 speeches ever delivered in American oratory. I mean, it was incredible.
I agree. I was watching it feeling like this seems way better than the usual State of the Union address. And then Nancy Pelosi ripping the thing up, I was like, see, she felt the same way. She's like, oh my God, this is too good.
Oh no, I mean, it was just, if you think about degrees of difficulty, I have never addressed a crowd under the pressure that Trump just did that thing. And I'm also not 73 years old. And I'm also not in charge of the free world. I mean, the amount of pressure...
Wait a minute, you're not?
I hope not.
I've been misled.
So the pressure that dude is under, our president, to do everything beyond giving the speech. It's not like he could say, well, all I've got to worry about today is the speech. He's got so many other things on his mind, not to mention, a young son, family, all sorts of issues. To get up there, and I'm sure that, the various and sundry insiders, don't do this, don't be too hard on this, make sure you shake Nancy Pelosi's hand, don't go there.
Oh, he didn't?
No, I'm just saying. So, I mean, he walked into that room and he was like, this is my room, bitches. I mean, it was incredible. The way in which he walked in there and he just made his case, he stuck to the facts, and he had these rhetorical flourishes. I mean, he didn't connect the dots the way maybe some of the people are going to do on the issue of Venezuela, unless I walked out of the room, came back, and there's this Guaido guy in the audience.
Yeah.
I mean, he basically was saying, you want Bernie in Venezuela?
Well, he was saying Guaido was the rightful, I don't know if I agree with that part, but he was saying that Guaido was the rightful ruler of Venezuela.
Well, but my point is he could have gone down a track of saying, America has a very simple choice, and I don't know that he made this comment, but America has a very simple choice in 2020. Do we want to follow Bernie, the Pied Pipers of progressive communism, Bernie Sanders and Wacko Bird AOC, down a path that gets you inevitably to Venezuela? Or do we want to stay on this path, a path that seems to work quite well and is working for most Americans, and in particular is working for the first time, notwithstanding the opposition of the Democrats, for the poorest among us? I mean, the people who are flourishing the most in percentage terms of their wages going up, their wealth going up, are the poorest among us. And I mean, his speech just hit, it was so well thought through. And beyond, so it's, you have this words on a piece of paper, but beyond that, the delivery of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a mixture of one of his rallies, Oprah handing out Pontiacs. I mean, it was incredible.
Well, and then Joe Biden tweeted this morning that Donald Trump had turned the State of the Union into a reality show episode, but it was a damn good episode. When he gave that scholarship to that little girl, just the look on her face was so genuine. I mean, her and her mother, like, first of all, there was no father there.
Right.
So it's like these two, like, little women in the world against everything. And then now the president has you on, gives this girl this opportunity. It almost made me cry.
Yeah, the grace.
And Nancy Pelosi rips up the document. What a slap in the face to that cute little girl.
Yeah, exactly. And, bringing the husband back to the military family. And,
those kids were like.
Yeah. It was, and the difference was, when you see, I said starkest contrast, because I'm sure people would like to make it, is to Hillary Clinton. And, her speeches in her contrived audiences, when she goes to the Southern black audiences and says that she carries hot sauce in her pocketbook. I mean,
53-47 on count 2, acquitted.
So it's done. I would expect that, with this done, and of course, Schiff will probably subpoena Bolton next, but and we'll go to impeachment round 2. But with this out of the way, I would look for a very swift movement out of Durham and others. I think things, with this cloud gone, we can get back to business as usual. And I think there will be quite painful retribution, deservedly painful retribution, against the treasonous hacks who instigated this.
I hope so. I'm looking forward to that. So.
Why did you don't have the New York Times up here, do you?
Huh?
In this house, you have in your own house, you put the New York Times
because
up.
I wanted to go to one that was, biased against Trump. Mm-hmm. So they were sort of nowhere near.
Good save. Good save.
Yeah, they were nowhere near where they needed to be. I mean, I hope that, they've already, it's so frustrating, Charles, because they've already started in with the rhetoric that, this doesn't mean anything. They're never going to give up.
Yeah, again, I think, one of the reasons I enjoy having breakfast in the McDonald's and walking around the city is you get to, you remember when you do that there are a large number of people who are, have got serious issues.
Yeah, and they're all in McDonald's.
Well, unfortunately, no. Many of them are in the House of Representatives,
right,
actually.
Exactly.
in media anchor rooms and green rooms, et cetera. So, no, I think this is a massive move. And it allows now the Democrats to run riot with a process here that was, flawed from the start. Now we have the vote happened. There was no obstruction of the vote. Trump could have made it a lot more difficult. People need to go back into the history, and I hope historians will do this, that for Clinton's impeachment, I mean, he threw every trick in the book at people trying to impeach him during that impeachment. And we'll need to contrast in time what Clinton did.
I don't remember the details of that very well.
I do. I mean, he invoked
what sort of thing did he do?
Well, first of all, he invoked every conceivable privilege, and even fanciful privileges, protective detail coverage, privilege or something like that, absurd efforts to delay things. And Trump didn't do that.
Right.
And Trump could have been even tougher, and still he won. So on the domestic front, I think he's made enormous progress. And on the international front, I think we looked. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know who this guy is, Charles, but he has raised an interesting point. This is Carl Higbee.
I think that's a name. If you hit his description, I think he's some kind of
Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
Author.
Yeah, exactly.
Bad speller. Elected Greenwich. What is that? I guess he's a Republican, something or other. Well, anyway, he raises the good point that 18 USC 2071 states, whoever having the custody of destroys the same shall be fined, shall forfeit his/her office and be disqualified from holding any office in the United States. He's talking about this law, which speaks to the destruction of official government records. And I think that this is an interesting point that he raises. What do you think about this? Will Nancy Pelosi?
I don't know who would enforce this, but whether the DOJ would go after this, but this is a crime, and I assume to prosecute. I don't know if you have immunity inside the House if you're the Speaker. I just don't know.
That's a good point. Perhaps she does. But it's still destruction of a government document. Well, I mean, it was just such bad behavior. There were some people tweeting that Nancy Pelosi is a badass, etc. I think you need to take it's two separate sentences. She's bad and she's an ass. But,
well, yeah. I mean, when you go back, I remember in the '69 time frame, in the spring of '69, I was 13 years old, and I was at this school that went when I was there from 7th grade to 12th grade. Mm-hmm. And that was when, you had Earth Day, you had, it was there was a lot going on then. And I can remember that, I forget, there was one particular front or another, and people decided that students wanted to tell the teachers, what we were going to do next, or whether we were going to go to class or not. And I come from a family that was very respectful of the educational process and also careful with money. And the school I went to was pretty expensive back then, even more so now. And I was like, I'm going to class.
Right.
But so the classes are canceled. There's this mayhem, with 13, 14, 15, 16-year-olds are running around.
Bedlam, you might say?
Bedlam, exactly. And the teachers are trying to, what do we do? The parents will be pissed off. It's not going to end well. We got exams coming up. And that's the environment in which Hillary and Bill, roughly around that time, they ended up a little bit later at Yale Law School together. And that was a moment where Nancy Pelosi's behavior today was sort of, oh, we'll show the man. We decide, we don't care what this Constitution says or what these, rules the patriarchy has crafted over time. We're just going to, we don't like something, we'll just tear it up. We want to encourage, this new way of thinking. And that's really, because they think that in chaos, the people who believe this think that if chaos comes, they're going to be the ones who rein it in and enforce order and, are on top of the pyramid.
Right.
But that's not what the Constitution is all about. And that's not her behavior, she could have gotten so much more done, and the criticisms are withering of her on the internet across the board, from Democrats.
Because it was just bad behavior.
It was stupid and bad behavior.
Yeah, just totally.
I'm mindful that we started a bit late and of the time.
Yeah, sure. I just want to let you know that Patricia is telling us that Nancy was hammered yesterday, drunk out of her mind, perhaps.
Maybe.
Anything is possible, Charles.
But she has a good heart.
Yes.
Maybe.
I don't think so.
So, what has happened here, sometimes, there's that saying that if you go into a room and you think you're the smartest person in it,
you're about to get fired.
You're about to get your ass handed to you. And similarly, I think he went into that room last night and was focused not merely on delivering the substantive message, but also eliciting the reactions, which he did get, which were filmed, which are public property, which can go right into campaign footage.
Nancy ripping the thing up.
Well, actually, I think the most telling would be the stories that were selected there. I'm sure great care was given to each of them. Those are real. I mean, the first story of the guy who fell into drug addiction. And it's very hard to get back out of that. And it's not, when you go down that path, it's a very small percentage of people break back out of that, work their way back into a productive life and get back together with their families. And so that story was a very poignant tale. And you could tell that guy, he was humble. He didn't necessarily like all the focus that he was getting, and he was very, very. He handled it incredibly gracefully. I thought, the first person
looked nervous, but
would you be nervous?
Of course.
It's like
it's a historic thing.
Yeah. So I mean that was incredible. And also it wasn't, Trump didn't describe each of those people as a virtue signal. A lot of these people that you see who get involved with, quote, charity, the Clinton model, it's all, aren't I great? I'm giving money away so responsibly. Of course, it's not my own money. I wouldn't do that. I just take other people's money to give it away. But it was very thoughtful and not easy to go through, in my mind, to go through and tell each of those stories the way he told them, not knowing whether somebody would interrupt him or yell at him or whatever. And so he told all these tales, and instead of leaping to their feet in unison, the Democrats looked down. Tlaib was on her phone.
Wow.
With,
I hope she was talking to her lawyer about what's going to happen with Laura Loomer.
With Ilhan Omar, exactly, right. As well. Talking to her latest boyfriend of how much more money she could steal from the government to give to her latest boyfriend. But anyway, the footage there of Trump saying, we've got the lowest unemployment rate for African Americans and the highest, 72% of all new jobs went to women, and on and on and on, these statistics, which I assume are correct. I hope they're correct. And you have the Republicans leaping, these racist Republicans. Trump says the racist, I'm kidding, obviously, of course, the racist gets up there and says, the African American unemployment has never been lower in history. Republicans jump to their feet cheering, and Democrats are like, that means that we can't keep them down on the plantation anymore. We can't keep them miserable, dependent on us. I mean, it was just, and you'll be able to cut that footage, and they will cut this footage not to a general national audience alone. They're going to go through and they're going to think through district after district. Baltimore would be a great one. Baltimore is a place that Democrats have literally destroyed. Camden, New Jersey. You can pick congressional district after congressional district, stitch together states after states. This rally approach that Trump has of doing a rally the night before the vote, as he's going to do next week in New Hampshire. I mean, the information he gets from these rallies, coupled with this footage, I mean, you really have to be a fool to be trying to, as his girlfriend I once said, to be jonesing to be the presidential candidate for the Democrats in 2020, because you are going to run into you're going to run into a whipsaw, basically.
Charles, they haven't even finished calculating the Iowa caucus yet. It's only 85%.
Yeah, I have something on this for a little bit later with a longer list that we could go through, which is very, very instructive. But yeah, let's cover that in a second, Jason, if that's all right.
Sure.
It's okay. So if we can go back into the slide quickly. Yeah. So Trump gave us, I think, in that speech, if you headline it a little bit, and it was previewed this way, it was a simple choice. You want gridlock or greatness? You take your pick, right? If Trump is going to win in 2020.
There's no doubt.
At this stage, a market suggests, he could face health problems. Things could happen between now and November. It's a long time.
The only thing that's going to stop it is an EMP.
Well, let's hope that doesn't happen.
I hope it doesn't happen.
So he gave us a simple choice. And Nancy, by ripping things up, and the scowling, nasty people who've been opposing Trump, who basically fundamentally are nasty people.
Yeah.
And they in fact, they were gloating about it. I remember after the election result, there were people saying, "I'm a nasty woman."
Right.
Yeah, you are. That's why you fucking lost, because nobody likes that. I should put it differently. Very few people like that, and most of those people live in Brooklyn. It's just not. It's a ridiculous approach, and I actually like Brooklyn. But anyway, so what we saw last night was somebody who was quite prepared to take on his critics, and he said, "All right, you want to see? Let's have a little discussion. Let's get right up. Let's go right into it." And on issue after issue, he went right into it, not knowing whether he'd be acquitted for sure. And he took the heat. And he didn't just take the cover off the ball. I mean, he took that ball and he hit it to Alpha Centauri. It was incredible.
Phenomenal performance, absolutely.
And the next step, you're sitting there. He did throw out candy to the Democrats, saying, let's do infrastructure, let's do this, let's do that. And if you're sitting there, the polling results are going to come back. Very curious to see in a real poll what Trump's popularity is, not simply nationally, but in the key swing districts and states. Very curious to see that. Very curious to see polling results for people who did not vote in 2016. What do they think of him today?
Well,
all parties and independent.
The other thing that he did that I felt was for lack of a better description, a master stroke. Like when he was talking about that little girl and her mother and giving her the scholarship and everything, I was on the edge of like, is this pandering? Is this showboating? Is he just giving one little girl some scholarship? But then when he said, I challenge the Democrats to do this for 1 million students, I was like, ooh, that's pretty good.
Right. Well, and at least he didn't kiss her on the lips the way Biden might have tried to do.
Smell her. Biden would be like, bring that little girl up here. Grab my legs.
After the State of the Union, could you bring her by?
So weird.
So, and I do think that, he's certainly has his own mind and his own approach to doing things, but I've got to believe that he's getting closer and closer to actually draining the swamp. I mean, he's really delivering on many, many things to date. Swamp still stinks. Swamp's still there.
Yeah.
I would have liked to see, and I hope he will do more of this, that instead of addressing the swamp in Washington, D.C., that he would take this opportunity from now through the election to address the American people in big venue after big venue. I think he should go to football stadiums and baseball stadiums and big venues and really mix it up. Pick places that are in states, they're near states that would drain audiences from, say, New York and New Jersey and whatever. Go to rural areas, look at the map carefully. And I'm sure he's doing all of this. But you look across the Democratic stage, neither the announced nor the lurking unannounced loony candidates, none of them can ascend to this level of competence in a live venue. None of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's, when he spoke about getting tired of winning, he was winning so hard last night. I kept thinking to myself, this doesn't look at all like a guy who's under the pressure of any kind of trial, impeachment, or anything.
Right. So it was really impressive.
It was.
So with that, I know your audience is steadily growing, which is great. And just a quick reminder for people who, if this is your first show with us, this is a different approach that we take. Thank you, Jason, for the privilege of being able to speak on many topics and for as long as I do speak. It's a real treat for me. And I've only been on this course with you because when we uncovered this massive set of frauds, both in the Clinton Foundation and the allied charities around it, but also in the way in which governments report their progress to we the people, I just felt that it was essential to try to marry your skills and your ability to reach an audience with your format with my experience addressing boards of directors and wealthy investors on complex projects around the world. So this is sort of a marrying of the two. We address you on air. We provide you as well these presentations. This is our 206th show. This will not be a 2-hour show today, but on average, most of them are around 2 hours. And what we do is we take a topic, we tend to spend 30, 45 minutes on the most recent stuff, and then we drill down into a portion of this massive set of unprosecuted frauds, trying to give really prosecutors and regulators the ability to get their arms and their minds to wrap it around this enormous set of still unprosecuted frauds. And by addressing it in this way, giving you these pull-down slide menus that you can print out if you want to print them out, or alternatively, just look at and electronically and follow the links. We hope that this satisfies the two very different types of minds. Some people say, like, give it to us in 60 seconds, and then you do that, and they say, well, then you haven't given us any detail. We like to do both. So we give you the summary point by point, and then we give you more detail than you may want. And there's a lot of it out there. And I happen to like this approach. I like being able to go back over the many slides that we've done and say, oh yeah, we talked about this before and that before. Now what I'm in the midst of doing is weaving this in to a quilt or frankly into a book, multiple different books and case studies, so that we can, once we see the reaction here, we can let the world know this is what you missed. This is what so many millions of people, hundreds of millions, billions of people missed this, allowed this fraud to rear its ugly head by October 23rd, 1997, and to course around the world, involving so many donors and so many, in theory, recipients of aid. And nobody did anything about it. It became a gigantic problem. And people said, on balance, let's just hope it goes away. And it will take this audience and the people who, as the audience builds, and the regulators who might want to do something, it will take a brave regulator, 2 or 3, to get up there and say, enough of this crap. Yes, this is a gigantic mess. Yes, it's going to embarrass Republicans and Democrats alike over long periods of time. We got to do something about it. So if you would like, we do appreciate constructive criticism. If you'd like to send it our way, do it on Twitter. Jason just put up each of our Twitter sites. Send me an email on a short email, if possible, and a first one, not more than, say, 250 words through my site. And I'll do my best to get back to you if it's constructive criticism or a question. I do get a lot of email, and I have a busy schedule, so I can't spend every day answering emails from 87,000 Crowdsource, or whatever it is, 89,000 Crowdsource the Truth 2 subscribers. So,
well, Crowdsource the Truth 2 is only about 13,000.
Well, still, even 13,000 is a lot.
But I'm glad that you brought it up, Charles, because the main Crowdsource the Truth channel, the Jason Goodman YouTube channel, is still under heavy attack from social engineers who have announced their intention to conduct gay ops escalation, which is the targeted deplatforming, defamation, and cyber harassment of me, with their stated goal being the destruction of Crowdsource the Truth. So the best way that people can help me fight that off is to become sponsors on Subscribestar or Patreon, and keep us going there and show the social engineers that they cannot win.
I agree.
But they should also subscribe to Crowdsource the Truth 2 on YouTube, and they're going to get the live streams on there until the main Crowdsource the Truth channel comes back. People can also utilize Super Chat on Crowdsource the Truth 2. So if they're in the chat right now and want to support the show, that's another option.
Great. And one thing I would just say before we jump into this section here is that if you want to help beyond financially helping Jason's channel, which I encourage you to do, if you really want to help spreading the news that we're doing this by word of mouth, figuring out 2 people, 6 people, 8 people, most everybody has an email list.
Yeah.
Send this 1 or more shows to your email list, tweet it out. If you've got somebody, and there are people, the divide is massive in this country, but most of us have friends that go back, depending on how old you are, long periods of time. You remember what it was like to be together in school, not knowing anything. And maybe you're on the different side of the fence. You're a scruffy, you're a Yaley, whatever. It could be the same thing, actually. But you're a conservative, economically, Yaley versus a scruffy. You can find people like this, and you can say, listen, how deeply have you gotten into the facts on the Clinton Foundation? Have you, for yourself, looked at any public filings? Are you aware of the laws, the strict laws on the books that pertain to charities? And most often people will say, no, I'm not. And they say, all right, take a look at this. You're the one who says the Clintons are great. Take a look at this presentation over here. Tell me what you think. Tell me your honest reaction. If you think I'm a Looney Tune, fine. But just, sit through this, and at the end of it, tell me what you think. And more often than not, when people do try to do this, many of them do come away and say, what, I missed this. This is horrible. And that, especially if somebody you're talking to has been involved in a charity because they think it's a good idea, or they support a charity because they think it's a good idea, but they don't know the laws. They don't know that a charity is not a way to make money. That's not what you're supposed to do.
Most people know that, don't they?
I don't know. I mean,
Bill Clinton doesn't seem to know that.
There's a book, there's a guy, Matthew Bishop, who's a good guy. He was the editor of the New York Economist, the American Economist, and he's a close friend, supposedly, of Bill Clinton, and I met him a few times. And he's actually written one or more stories that mentioned me very positively about GE in The Economist. And so he's a reasonable guy, but he wrote a book that's utter hogwash called the Venture Philanthropy. And it came out in like 2006 or 7, around that time frame. Bill Clinton wrote one of the forewords to it. And, it's just utter rubbish. The premise of the book is that, the best way or a way to combine doing good works with venture capital is to do both in the same entity. And that's just not right. It's like, no, you can't do that. And he's plenty smart. But in this one, he just didn't get deeply enough into the facts, in my opinion.
It's like having maybe like a cattle slaughterhouse and a preschool in the same facility.
Yes, so things could go poorly with that.
It's not well thought through.
Yeah. So we've sort of talked already about the State of the Union address, but really, I say it here, it's fact-filled dynamite. I mean, it was, when you go over it, Molly Hemingway has got a summary in the Federalist there that's fantastic, and a bunch of key takeaways. I think it's going to take time for people to absorb what it was that Trump did last night.
But it was epic.
It really was. It was like, can I have my wallet back, my clothes back, my house back, whatever? I mean, it's like, you took all that shit from me, and I was just sitting there going, it was really something. And Van Jones, who is not somebody whose politics I admire, but who I believe is a very thoughtful person when it comes to issues of progress for African Americans, he is right away is cautioning Americans, his side. He said, "Now wait a minute. What Trump is talking about here is not simply saying words that sound good. He's talking about delivering for African Americans. We ought to try that as a Democratic Party." And Pelosi and her people say, "No, we don't want to do that. We want to keep him down."
Who hired this guy? Get him out of here.
What does he know about African Americans? Okay. No, and that really is the truth. I mean, I don't think, I can't speak for African Americans, but I think I can speak for Americans. I think that, just as I don't want a handout, I want a chance. I want to decide where I'd like to compete. I like to know the rules of the game. And then I want to compete. And I want to know that if I lose, why did I lose? I want to learn from my mistakes. If I won, I want to know that I won fairly and squarely. And I also want to treat whoever I may have bested in the competition with dignity. That's the way I'd like to. I don't want to go spend my entire life or have my family be consigned for generations as, you're the group that needs help. We wise white liberals are going to help you. Don't you worry. Don't look too closely where all the money goes over here, but we're going to help you. Don't you worry. Yeah. And then generation after generations in poverty and welfare and whatever. That doesn't make any sense for the people you're, quote, trying to help. People want to help themselves. And our schools are failing. I don't think because of Donald Trump. I think they're failing because of the teachers' unions have rigged the system, and for many reasons they're failing.
Well, it was interesting because, I was really struck by this little girl and her mother because they were dressed modestly. You could tell that this was, these were two people that were going to have a lot of things stacked against them in terms of trying to get ahead in life, and just the look of joy on the little girl and the mother's face.
Right.
It was such a moment. I was thinking, like, what will this little girl think, 20 years from now when she looks back, how this changes the trajectory of her life. And then I was also thinking, well, like, wait a minute. Why doesn't Trump improve the schools rather than giving this girl money to go to a private school? And then I thought, maybe Trump is trying to move us away from public school, which is an interesting idea.
Well, one of the guys who's passed away, who was one of my most important mentors in business, was a great man called Peter Flanagan. And there was a guy called Eugene Lang who got the credit for doing it. But Peter did it first, I think, which is back in the 70s or 80s, I forget when. He went up to a school, I think it was in Harlem, and at the graduation, some ceremony, he said...
Oh, paid for everybody's loans or something?
Yeah, no. He said, looking ahead, he said, "I will pay for the college, in high school, I will pay for the college tuition for every single person in this room who wants to go to college.
Jeez.
And he did it knowing that the background of the people was that they would qualify for some assistance. He wasn't going to have to write a check for everybody's full boat. But nonetheless, it was
still
incredibly generous. And there came together a charity called the Student Sponsored Partnership, I think it was, where the idea was people, I was a lesser person in this, but people like me who were very busy with my own young family and my career did not have the time to mentor kids in high school in these troubled parochial schools, or Catholic schools mostly, in and around New York and in various boroughs. But I had at the time the money to pay for a parochial school for the number of kids that I paid for. And so they married people like me up with younger people in banking who had a little bit more time but didn't have the money. And so you would get these kids really mentored. That period, not Joe Biden mentoring or Harvey Weinstein mentoring, but really thoughtful mentoring. These are kids from broken families, in some cases almost irretrievably broken families, who at that tender moment when you're 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and you've got a choice between not doing your homework and fucking around with the wise asses, or buckling down and missing that I don't know, movie thing or whatever it would be, the chance to get together, to really bone up on algebra and calculus or whatever it is you're going to study, make those crucial life-changing decisions. He made, Gene Lang and Peter Flanagan made such a difference in the lives. It's countless difference, and I know other people as well have done that. And I'm more of a numbers dude, so when you look at the problem in the schools, I know how much private school costs. It's very expensive. Right now, it's like $75,000 a year for a boarding school. It's but then you go and you look, and that's after tax money. Then you go and you look at what does it really cost. You do a fair analysis of the cost of public school. It's not the cost of supplies. You have to look at the pension obligations, all these things. Fairly calculated. And these schools that we're putting our kids through are, in the main, teaching them drivel that is not going to be useful. And they're doing it so that they can support lots and lots of overpaid administrators, in some cases, teachers who just don't give a shit about the students. Now, are there noble teachers in the public school system? Of course there are. People who sacrifice, who use their own money, who aren't rich, who pay for things they shouldn't have to pay for and spend far more time on their kids than they're expected to do. Of course there are, but that's the exception and not the rule. And that needs to change. We need to stop paying lip service to education and actually stand up and say, what do we need to compete in this great world? And what does the next generation need to compete? Let's create that environment, recognizing that we're going to have broken families. We're going to have obstacles. Let's do our best to help these children win and not give them participation trophies, which is what they're doing in the Iowa caucus, it seems, as an example. So it was a speech we'll turn over and talk about it again and again. You had the one criminal law in there. I thought it would be useful. And there's two 2201s. There should only be one 2201. It's my mistake. But this gives the definition of what presidential records are here. Okay, and clearly, the way I would look at this, the record that Trump personally gave to Nancy Pelosi was definitely a presidential record.
She destroyed it.
And she just destroyed it on camera, right on the eve of an impeachment trial where supposedly
for Trump an improper purpose. She was trying to sway public opinion.
It was just, it's absurd. She really was absurd. And it's the kind of thing, remember, Hillary Clinton did that. That's what got her kicked off. The similar sort of thing is what her kicked off the Whitewater.
Watergate.
Watergate thing, yeah.
I like the idea of putting Hillary Clinton on the Whitewater investigation. Didn't find any evidence. It's funny.
Sorry, I got confused there.
No, it's okay.
Watergate. These things will happen. But anyway, yeah, I think Nancy Pelosi has been living in an environment for too long where she is certain that she will never be punished for anything. So she thinks she can get away with everything.
Yeah. Charles, I do want to thank Mary Lynn for for using Super Chat strictly to celebrate the acquittal of President Trump. Thank you, Mary.
That's very good. I think we could also take up a collection. You know, these white outfits, somebody will have to explain them to me. I think they got the message wrong. They were supposed to be wearing straitjackets.
Yeah.
Some of them will be wearing straitjackets. And this, again, I'd written this several hours ago, but I think if you hit this Gateway Pundit link below that one, apparently people were calling into C-SPAN.
Saying what?
Democrats ripping Pelosi during the speech. And you see quotes down here saying, somebody said, I've been a Democrat for a long time. I will never vote for a Democrat again. I mean, I don't think this went very well.
Not for Nancy Pelosi or the Democrats. I mean, it's one of those things where, I mean, Trump he was in the zone, you know? Sometimes you're there and sometimes you're not. But, I mean, it was just so well done.
I've been a Democrat for 77 years. What I've seen tonight, I'm changing my mind.
That's good.
I mean,
I think
people voted for Hillary will never vote Democrat. I mean, now maybe there's probably some people on the Upper West Side of Manhattan, you know, some those neighborhoods in Chicago and Washington, D.C. You go, girl. You know, you got them. But I think you have to remember that I would want to say that roughly 50% of the country doesn't vote, you know. And what Trump was appealing there to were the independents and the people who didn't vote for him in 2016 to take a closer look. And the number of people who are going to be talking about that experience last night are the people who hated it. You know, the conversations about this are going to explode.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting little ad. Will Trump be the first president to be reelected after impeachment? I guess Clinton's impeachment happened during his second term.
Yeah.
They're going to try to impeach him again, but it's going to fail again. They are literally like the Wile E. Coyote and Trump is the Roadrunner. Just can't get it straight.
Yeah. So then we have, here's the thing I was referring to, the Democratic caucus results. And let's see if they've updated it. This is, 84% reporting. Now this, I think, is a better thing to look at than what you had for a few interesting reasons. This is everyone in the mix. And note this interesting one down here, other. Okay?
Who's the other?
I don't know. It's probably, you know, Jaime Manouche and your mother and whatever.
My mother wasn't running.
I'm just saying people, some other name or whatever. But you go down here and you say, let's focus on this. So 142 people in the other category, right? 165 in the other category in the second round. Now, let's, you know, Delaney in the second round, you understand.
Oh, wait, this one has Bernie at the top, not Buttigieg.
Right. Well, except that's in the first round. There you go with your 33. But look at this, Jason, look at this. Other 142, right? Delaney gets 9. Then across the line, he gets 0. Let's do the same thing. Bennett is, what is he? Is he a senator?
Don't know.
Okay. Now look at Doomberg. Here's Michael Doomberg.
Oh, yeah.
129. 178. And he only gets 10 in the second round. Other got 165. Other didn't spend 200 plus million. Doomberg gets 10. At this point, I'd be saying, I know I seeded Iowa. I wasn't expected to win, but come on, 10 people.
That means 10 people voted for Michael Bloomberg?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, in the caucuses, right?
Holy cow.
Only
how
10.
Many?
And Tulsi Gabbard, who I think is actually a decent human being, she didn't spend 200 plus million. She got 40% more votes, right? And then you look up here. I mean, the levels. Deval Patrick. I mean, he needs to just give it a break. Steyer, though, is another one who spent over $100 million, and all he gets is 1,874 votes. I mean, are you kidding me?
None of this makes any sense,
right? And so you then go look up this. You look at this list here. I mean, you've got Yang. His approach is he wants to give away, taxpayer money. Everyone gets an income. That didn't work so well for him. And you're left then with the bunch in the top 5. Here, Klobuchar, who has no executive experience that I've been able to see in anything. And in Peter Schweitzer's book, she comes across pretty poorly. And then you get Herbert the pervert. You get Joe Biden. And I don't know if you know about Herbert the pervert on Family Guy, but yeah, I mean, that's a horrible character in Family Guy. But I can't. Every time I see Biden, I think of Herbert the pervert.
Well, someone operating under the very clever name John Glasgow is reminding us that with Biden now under 15%, no delegates for Joe.
Yeah, no soup for you.
Well, it seems like these numbers are remarkably conveniently calculated in terms of, isn't it like FOH, Friends of Hillary, who created this stupid app that's taking 3 days to calculate something that old ladies counting paper can do by that night?
Right. I mean, they're not worth that many votes, right? And then you have the inauthentic Indian up there at 19.5%. And as one of our close friends was explaining to me I mean, by our close friends, I mean Jason and my close friends, was explaining to me that the Democrats absolutely need Warren in because you can assume that virtually all of Warren's votes would have gone to Bernie. And I mean, she's trying to copy him with progressive this and that. So, I mean, if she'd been out, this would have been a stomp fest on Boot Edge, who is, it's absurd. And what does this say, 84%?
So you got
of reporting?
Oh, it's updating. It just updated by itself.
86% now.
2% more.
Yeah. So, I mean, but you look at this and this should tell you a lot. I mean, for all the people who are ranting and raving about the earth is going to end in 11.6 years or whatever it is, think about the amount of carbon released into the atmosphere by the various and sundry people who have either
spewing hot air at this
spewing
nonsense.
Hot air. Well, the number of people who had to drive to the various caucus centers and drive back, the amount of preparation, the film crews that went there. You go through and you look at this, and in the end, what they're doing is they're just going to a back room and saying, we've got to have a tie here. Like, that's the way it works in education. Everybody gets a tie. Sanders and Buttigieg, fundamentally a tie. Let's go on to New Hampshire. Let's see what happens there. Because Hillary's trying to decide whether she's just going to steal the nomination and rig the general again. Let's not waste any time on this. I mean, this is so embarrassing, frankly, to the Democratic Party that with all of this run-up, that you still, what is this now, 2 days later?
Yeah, they can't even
still
count
don't know what actually happened. They're taking a page out of Jason one, right? We still don't know what happened. Tune in an hour. And it's funny, I had a sense something like this was going to happen when I watched the election results. Because they kept on teasing, just a few more minutes, we'll have this. Anyway.
I mean, you could sort of tell that something screwy was afoot.
It seems they didn't have the kind of early returns that they should have had. So we don't necessarily have to pull these links up because in the interest of time. But one thing that really is fascinating in these articles, and don't pull the links up if you don't mind, Jason, people can read it, is that according to the early estimates, turnout in the Iowa caucuses in 2016 for Democrats was 30% below what it was in 2008.
Wow.
Now, there was the Obama drama and excitement. It's slightly different, but 30% below. The population in the United States is bigger than it used to be. The voting age population is also bigger than it used to be. I mean, that is sobering stuff.
A lot of information coming out about Buttigieg and all the weird, like, where was he? Why did he join the Army or the National Guard or whatever if he was anti-war? And then suddenly, just like Obama, he comes out from being like the mayor of Whoville to suddenly running for president. And he tweeted before they counted the results, oh, we, shocked the world. It's like,
I'm not buying any of that.
No.
Yeah. And you have to remember, he's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, which is where Notre Dame is. It's a college town. It's a relatively small place in Indiana. And he's done a disastrous job there. I mean, it's not like you could say, well, I took on a failing New York City after Dinkins, Rudy Giuliani, and look what happened. I took on a failing college town where
made it worse.
Most of the students disappear for the summer and everything's a lot worse. And I think based on that experience, I should be able to be the president of the United States. I mean,
they should make him the mayor of the United States.
The mayor of Washington, D.C.
Here's your office over here.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Just go wait in there.
So another piece is I think that Nadler was trying to be cute, which is really, that's just one thing he's never going to be.
Correct.
He held hearings on what happened with the FISA process.
Yeah, I saw that.
Today
he was
at 10
talking
o'clock.
to
Christopher Wray.
That was the most idiotic, boring,
Right.
do-nothing hearing. Nothing was said.
Right. And so we talked about Romney. He needs to go back to wherever he came from. But did you see this story in the Daily Beast? This is funny.
I don't know.
So what Trump, I guess this is just the way Washington works, but before the...
the Daily Beast always doesn't like it that I have an ad blocker. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
One thing I like is the proliferation of photographs of Donald Trump angrily pointing at people.
You like that, or you don't?
I do like it. They need to be pointed at.
Yeah. So here, the funny thing that happened is he had everybody over to the White House for lunch with the prominent news anchors, and except for all of the ones from CNN and MSNBC.
Good.
And in the old days, what would have happened is Fox and ABC would have said, "If you don't have my colleagues, I'm not going to come." In the old days, but with this story, apparently they said, "I'll take that lunch." Actually,
yeah.
They didn't stand up for their CNN and MSNBC fake news colleagues. So.
And now, of course, we're hearing they got a little ad for Bolton right there. They're going to have Adam Schiff do something with John Bolton. I think people are very close to the saturation point for Adam's bullshit.
Exactly. So, got a few quick points here, and we'll stay to the time, even though we started late. As we prepare now to understand what, as this friend of mine used to say, the fuck the FBI was doing when it said it was going to investigate the Clinton Foundation, we have the not so clever by half Angel Urena and his team working with the Clintons, who tried to interfere in an investigation that I think is going to come to light imminently by floating that Huber story on the 9th of January or the 10th or whenever it was, that Huber is winding up his investigation having found nothing. That same team is going to have to explain, and the FBI is going to have to explain this. And let me just briefly take you through it. For those of you who don't know about it, there's a 3-part dump on this investigation into something called William J. Clinton Foundation that the FBI believes existed in the time frame 2001 to 2005. The only problem with this is there was no such entity called William J. Clinton Foundation in this time frame. Okay, and so they fooled even the FBI. And you count up the number of pages that are in this document dump that came out right around the election of 2016 it started. It's 908 pages in total, of which a significant number are sort of pages that aren't really evidence. There's like filler pages and this page and that page.
Redacted.
Well, just filler, literally filler pages.
Like this page
this page is missing or whatever. So this includes everything, 908. Now in part 3, which came out, I forget when, there's an internal FBI memo on page 138, it's dated the 21st of March, 2001. It gives 3 case IDs, and people in the audience who are familiar with the FBI practice can dive into this. I don't know the significance of these numbers. Maybe they don't mean anything. But there were 3 open cases on March 21st, 2001. And 2 of the named parties in these cases were William Jefferson Clinton and Hillary Rodham Clinton. 3 pending cases open on March 21st, 2001. Okay? And it says here that this was initiated, these investigations, plural, were initiated at the request of Mary Jo White, who magically disappears off the scene and is replaced by none other than James Comey, end of 2001, after September 11th.
Mary Jo White, didn't they? No, that's
she went
Mary
into
Jo Kopechne.
Different fate for her. And then it says, a tremendous volume of documents, many thousands of pages are anticipated to be received pursuant to these subpoenas, as well as information received in electronic format. Now, some of these many thousands of pages are grand jury materials. And you remember that Listen Fat Naylor was all in for getting the grand jury materials, or getting the materials that were gotten under well, that shouldn't have been released. He was all in for breaking the secrecy there. And we know from this, all we've seen so far, 908 pages, including filler, and that back in March 21st, 2001, when the FBI was just starting on its work, they expected to see many thousands of pages. 908 is less than 1,000 pages. Right. So where are all these other thousands of pages? And exactly what happened? There have got to be people now in the Trump administration who have the ability to go into this file and say, all right, exactly what is in the whole file, okay? What might have been in satellite files that went sideways that people didn't want to see? Why have the FBI been sitting on all this information? And how come the FBI was not smart enough, March 21st, 2001, to ask the obvious question? Does the Clinton Foundation actually exist? And if it does, what's its name, for starters? How come they have yet to be able to do any of this work? And how did Bill and Hillary Clinton, having started out going from under investigation, the 21st of March 2001, how have they been able to carry forward all these charities around the world from a starting place where they were under investigation March 21st, 2001? How did things change for them? Who allowed things to change? Did Lois Lerner, and the fact that she went into the IRS department responsible for overseeing charities, tough decisions on charities, by June, July 2001, might that fact help explain why the Clintons were able to push this aside? Or the fact that Robert Mueller went into the FBI September 4th, 2001, or that James Comey took over for Mary Jo White, or that Rod Rosenstein was in the Department of Justice responsible for overseeing fraud investigations. Might any of those facts bear on why this investigation didn't spot the obvious fraud we're now going to remind you of in a second? So if we go to the next page. Okay, again, this is the FBI, and I have a high respect for the people in the FBI. It's not easy to take on crime constantly. And
you
then
mean to do crime?
That would be the other division of the FBI. But here, again, by March 21st, 2001, because there are public records on this thing, which was actually called then the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, there are laws, there are regulations, they are at state level, federal level, international level. There are reports that have been issued. They have been sent across state lines. They are false and materially misleading. They are obviously so. We take the various quadrants that somebody who knew something about charities should have been looking. They should ask the question, was this entity organized ever?
We have a question coming from Wallace Durham in Super Chat asking if you have any inkling that any entity in the government will pursue anything. It's a good question, and thank you for the Super Chat, Wallace.
Wallace, I have more than just inklings. And so we will be covering that. I'm actually working on an article that I hope will be published as soon as Friday. Maybe might slip based on publishing, based on what else happens, where I think there's going to be some news on our great friends Larry Doyle and John Moynihan and what they've been up to. People have been asking, those guys made quite a splash. In fact, I was talking to somebody in another country, and that person was very funny and said to me, I told my parents about these two guys who were trying to pursue the Clinton Foundation, and my parents don't speak English, but they watched the whole testimony, and they love those two guys. They're really sympathetic. They don't even speak English. But so a lot of people are saying, what the hell ever happened to those guys? I mean, they got a gigantic amount of attention on Zero Hedge for the hearing. They gave fantastic testimony. Huber was supposed to show up at the hearing, and he didn't. Things have been happening, and they're in the public domain. They're tough to find. This would be Mr. Doyle, and this would be Mr. Moynihan. It's tough to find what I will be sharing, but I'm going to explain the significance of it in an article, which I hope to get out in the next several days.
Yeah, it's interesting because I was there, people might recall, And they told us that, or at least someone had the explanation that Durham wasn't there because he's busy with the investigation. Huber, right, wasn't there because he was busy with the investigation, but actually it seems like he was busy investigating nothing.
Right. Right. So if we, if we go back, the thing was never organized. It was never registered in the annual reports to the IRS for 98, 99, 2000. They state that they did not have to file their return in any state, but that's not true. They actually did have to, and they did register in multiple states. They never filled out a tax return for 1997. Their state registrations are all false. Their annual reports 990 are all false. They didn't get an audit. They had to, under New York law, California law, Arkansas law, many laws, they actually had to get a real accounting firm to do an audit, and they didn't get one. There's no evidence of any audit. In the forms that are filed with the IRS, when you get an audit, you have to pay for it. And they say for 98, 99, 2000 that they spent no money on audits. So, I mean, they're just admitting that what they did was boldly not in compliance with law. Their list of contributions, I have the 98 list in red because the biggest contributor, 2.3 million, was from, I believe, the second presidential inaugural committee, which was run by Terry McAuliffe and Ann Jordan, Ann being one of 3 trustees of the Clinton Foundation. They never explained the significance of that overlap. That's more than a majority of the declared income. Was that really, how much money did that second presidential inaugural committee actually raise? Where did it put the money? The total revenues, the differences between the total revenues and the contributions don't make any sense. If you look at 2000, they have roughly $8.5 million versus $8.9 million, so they have $450,000 in other income. How do you generate that other income? My suspicion is that they raised a lot more money than the numbers that are declared, and they were sloppy, and they only wanted to show low amounts of money coming in because they had things to finance. In 99 and 2000, Hillary had primaries. She had a general election for Senate. The Democrats had a need for money, and even so, Gore lost. So they raised in total, with interest and stuff, $15 million. They only had expenses of $1.5 million. Most of those expenses were on fundraising. They generated, therefore, $13.8 million in, what are called change in net assets or profit. But you ask yourself, in all this period, from October 23rd, 1997 to December 31st, 2000, did the Clinton Foundation move 1 pound of dirt? 1 pound of dirt in the Little Rock site. Not an ounce of dirt was moved. So what the hell were they doing for 3.25 years? What happened to all this money? And how could you declare that you had program expenses of $110,000? More importantly, and here's a question for the bright bulbs in the FBI and their forensic accountants. How did this William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation spend $1,198,585 on land, buildings, and equipment? What land? They didn't take control. They didn't sign a lease for the Little Rock. It was a swamp, wasn't it? Well, the point is they didn't sign a lease on the Little Rock property until March 1st, 2002. What did they buy? And the answer is I think they bought a property in Hot Springs, Arkansas, that was owned by members of the Clinton family, in which Bill Clinton may have been, and his brother Roger even, may have been beneficiaries of that property sale. And none of this has been explained. And here you have the FBI. It's March 31st, 2001. You wouldn't have the number shown for 2000, but you would have every other number. You would have known by March 21st, 2001 that the Clinton Foundation had not filed the tax return that was required for October 23, 1997 to December 31st, 1997. You wouldn't have needed to ask for thousands and thousands of pages. You'd have said, this William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation never existed, never registered in Washington, D.C., where they were active, and Bill and Hillary were pulling the strings of it. This is a fake foundation. It should have been shut down then, and they hadn't, at this point, they hadn't begun construction in Little Rock. Right? They could have just shut it down. So, all right, let's get these presidential papers, wherever they may be, the ones that, Bill couldn't get destroyed fast enough. Let's round them all up and put them into a real archive. That's what they should have done, okay, by March 31st, 2001. So the question is, what did they actually do? And don't tell us that you can't figure that out, because you're the Federal Bureau of Investigation. What the hell were you doing?
Planning bombings.
Yeah. So let's go to the next page. So, next and final. So, Bill, here's from the Clinton Foundation. It says, President Clinton established the Clinton Foundation. Right? I didn't write this. And you can see it for yourself. Don't go to the link on this one. But here he's saying he established the Clinton Foundation. Okay. So you're the guy who decided not to organize the Clinton Foundation, not to register it properly, not to put yourself down as a trustee, not to put yourself down as a key employee, not to fill out any 990 properly, not to register to solicit, and you raised all this money illegally, using the telephone, using the mail, whatever. It's a violation of, multiple crimes, and you're admitting to it right here. And if that's not good enough, I know this Twitter is a dangerous place for, O'Keefe has been kicked off.
Yeah.
But here's Bill Clinton, right? I didn't do this tweet. I mean, this is Bill Clinton and his press flack. I probably managed this. What does it say here, Jason, about the Clinton Foundation?
Where? Here?
Yeah, on the top. It says founder of the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah.
Okay? Founder. Follow the Clinton Foundation for more on our work around the world, none of which is lawfully authorized by any government agency. And this is on Twitter. And they're going to go after Project Veritas, but they're going to let this grifter, keep committing charity fraud. Twitter is enabling charity fraud by allowing this tweet to stand. And if I were a rich government, I'm thinking, I don't know, do we know any rich governments around the world, Jason?
Maybe U.S.?
Well, I don't know. Governments we might have know about around the world, and say Australia, New Zealand, Sweden,
Norway.
Norway, yeah, England, France. I mean, Brazil, Chile, any of those.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd look at this and I'd say, you know what? I'm going to sue you, Bill Clinton. I'm going to think about whoever else is collaborating in enabling this charity fraud. I'll think about whether I want to go after Twitter, right? As a government.
But Twitter would be protected from this post by the Communications Decency Act,
right.
Section 230.
That may be, but Twitter may want to do business in the government in Australia. They might want to do business in Norway.
Right. They don't have that law there.
Yeah, and they might, not want to take on the seriously cheesed off government of insert blank in each country. So here's Bill Clinton. He just got that look, and he's got 11.5 million followers, and he just has spent a lifetime getting away with a whole bunch of crap. And, we the people are just sitting around saying, okay, you want to abuse us? Keep abusing us. Now, when I say key employee, this is at the time for the 2001 annual report. You have to list each person was a key employee of the organization at any time of the year. So, i.e. in 2001, when Bill Clinton founded the Clinton Foundation, you're a key employee even if you did not receive compensation from the organization. So Bill has said that, the family has said that we receive reimbursement of our expenses, but there's never been an explanation of exactly how much money the Clintons have gotten as reimbursed for their, quote, legitimate expenses. Chelsea Clinton needs a chief of staff and a special office, and when she travels, she has to fly in an entourage with all her aides and handlers, and when she travels on foundation business and also on other business, how is the allocation considered? And there's no detail of any of that. And it says, a key employee is any person having responsibilities or powers similar to those of officers, directors, or trustees. No question that Bill Clinton was a key employee of this charity, arguably while he was president, but certainly from January 20th, 2001 forward.
Can you have another job while you're president?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But you might be able to say, because it's charitable, if it were a legitimate charity.
He's just part-time.
You might be able, I don't know if you can get away with it.
Moonlighting as president.
But certainly from January 20th, 2001, he was a key employee. He should have been swept into this disclosure, and they have not filled this stuff out properly. And there's a big problem for Bill Clinton on January 19th, 2001. On January 19th, 2001, he signs an agreement to surrender his law licenses. There are long articles about it, And one requirement of the agreement was he had to admit that he had lied under oath multiple times and obstructed the administration of justice. Okay, he had to admit that, and he did admit that, and he did surrender his law licenses, both the one in Arkansas and his license to practice before the Supreme Court. And when you go around and you register a charity in different states, some states are tougher than others. New York State on the books is pretty tough. You have to disclose when responsible employees have been involved in administrative proceedings of the type that would cause you to surrender your law license. I mean, when you're a lawyer and you get to a place where you have to admit that you, pursuant to proceedings having to do with the Code of Professional Conduct, you break the Code of Professional Conduct as a lawyer, you lie under oath, and you obstruct the administration of justice to the point where your local bar association and a former student who was the judge, a student of his, throws the fucking book at him, and he has to ultimately admit that he lied under oath and obstructed justice.
Wait.
That's the kind of stuff that you would disqualify you in certain countries from getting anywhere near a charity, and should have disqualified him, should now disqualify him from having anything to do with this fraud, the Clinton Foundation.
It was a student of his that was the...
Susan Weber Wright was a judge. I mean, he had taught at University of Arkansas Law School, and one of the students in his class eventually then became a judge in Arkansas.
Wow, that's pretty good. And she
was pissed.
Right. Well, rightfully so. I mean, it's interesting that there was a legitimate crime happening there, and some of the same people who are trying to impeach Trump now weren't having it back then. Everybody's seen those clips of the conflicting statements. I didn't mean to cut you off, Charles. Is there more from this slide that you want to go over?
This is really it. I mean,
so there's something interesting that somebody sent me while we were going there. Not directly related, but back to the Iowa caucus. This is...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Ian Miles Chong, who I'm not familiar with, but this is a good tweet from him, that the top donor to this software company that created this app, Shadow Inc., is George Soros.
Well, these are two great names, actually. Fred Eichner is another important name. So George Soros, through a supposed charity, donated $1 million to Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative, Inc. in 2004, when that entity did not lawfully exist and wasn't a charity. Fred Eichner gave more than that to Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative. He gave in the order of $5 million or so to fund the Clinton Foundation doing work in China, where it was not authorized to do any work at this time, fighting HIV/AIDS. And interestingly, Fred Eichner, I think that's how you pronounce his name, his own charity was established long ago, not to do stuff in China, but narrowly to do stuff helping people in Illinois and 2 neighboring states. So his donation, which was substantial given the size of his other grants, was absolutely, in my view, illegal. And here, so you're the 2 biggest donors to this thing that screwed up the Iowa caucus by far, 4.1 million. If you add it up, 2 biggest ones of these guys were involved in Clinton Foundation HIV/AIDS Initiative frauds in 2004. Okay, this George Soros is trying to fuck up the world, and Fred just the United States of America, I guess, in China.
Right.
But and then these other people, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know any of these other people. But I mean, this whole issue of and here we have to be careful. Donor of Shadow Inc. There's Shadow Inc. I don't know that that's a charity, but the entity that gave money to Shadow Inc. I think Shadow Inc. might be a for-profit entity, but there are entities that quote, invested money in Shadow Inc., one of which through a charity. All right, so this is an area, the intersection of charities. Now let's see what it says.
I'm not finding it.
It's definitely shadowy.
I mean, that's weird that something would be called Shadow Inc.
Who knows? The shadow knows.
It's weird, isn't it?
It is.
So, but, I mean, I don't know.
That's also interesting. Open Corporates is experiencing a temporary technical problem. We'll probably no longer have that problem right after the election.
Right after they delete all the information about Shadow Inc.
Right.
Really unbelievable. You know, Charles, I must comment, you look much brighter today, less noise. Your overall image quality seems better. It's almost as if I've purchased additional lights.
It could be like Kaizen thing going on, right?
Exactly.
Kaizen
There's
disease.
constant improvements going on. I don't know what happened to us the second before we went live. That has nothing to do with the new lights, but it's always something here. So, you know, I want to thank everybody who sponsors the show and makes it possible. Even if people are just watching the free shows on YouTube and Facebook and Periscope, they can watch on Crowdsource The Truth 2, while the main Jason Goodman channel remains under social engineering attack. Oh, I don't know if you saw this earlier, Charles. There was an interesting thing occurred, I guess, last night. People know that I've been under attack from social engineers. And, you know, there's this constant, you know, spinach of facts, you know, trying to say that the police are doing this or that to suppress information. This woman, Susan Holmes, who used to appear as Queen Tut, who approached me as an ally and a friend, who claimed initially to have information about Robert David Steele, later became a co-defendant in Steele v. Goodman. She's been arrested in Larimer County for committing perjury, something I believe she's done several times in Steele v. Goodman.
You know what she looks like?
What?
If you think about the one of, I think, our favorite comedy shows, Seinfeld, and you think about, you know, one of the shows that I think, the series of them that are very funny, are the alternative Seinfeld cast. She's the alternative Seinfeld cast for Hillary.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, this is someone who has made persistent efforts to propagate lies about me with no purpose other than to damage my reputation and create cannon fodder for which Robert David Steele has included in his lawsuit. So I've suspected from the beginning that Susan Holmes was an operational plant sent to me in order to do things to facilitate that lawsuit. The lawsuit is still ongoing. I don't know if I think I've mentioned it. I haven't said too much about it, but recent order in that lawsuit has canceled the trial and ordered Robert David Steele to a settlement conference. So we'll see. I've been saying all along that this has been a hashtag fake lawsuit. And I mean, it's a real lawsuit. It's in federal court, but it's the premise that's false. And I'm glad, frankly, to see Susan Holmes arrested. She was attempting to misuse red flag laws to basically destroy the career and reputation of the police officer who neutralized her son, who presented an immediate threat of deadly violence to him and other police officers, something that Susan Holmes has yet to face. She's been on a 2 or 3 year campaign to destroy the lives of the officers there in Larimer, Colorado. So we'll see what happens to her.
Sounds like she's on the Avenatti program running for president.
Maybe so. We'll have to see. But I want to thank everybody for watching. Going to be back in just a little while with Lee Stranahan. We've got High Dive with Lee Stranahan tonight. That's going to be on Subscribestar and Patreon. So if you're not already a sponsor, please join us for that. People love to see what Lee has to say on these deep dives into, we're going to be talking about impeachment. We're going to be talking about Ukraine Gate. What's going to happen now to the Bidens? Oh, and also Rudy Giuliani had another great podcast. He's playing more of this testimony, and he showed the affidavit from Victor Shokin. Everybody has said that, you know, Joe Biden fired this guy for being corrupt, but no one has presented any evidence that Shokin ever did anything corrupt. He was fighting corruption in Ukraine.
Good stuff, Jason. I hope people tune in.
Hopefully justice will prevail, Charles. And thanks everybody for tuning in today. Have a great evening.